I don't know whether you remember in the early part of the present century, there was a show in Edinburgh which was quite which drew one's breath away a little. It ended up being videoed, and I think it did a stint in London as well. But it began in Australia. It was created by a person called Simon Morley and David Friendly Friend. And it was first staged, in fact, at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival in 1998. But its international breakthrough came in Edinburgh in 2000, where Lynn Gardner reviewed it at the Presence and called it a gently witty, surprisingly charming little show. And it involved two naked performers who offered what they called genital origami. The Loch Ness Monster was created on stage, the hamburger, the wristwatch, the Eiffel Tower, and so on, with a live camera projecting close-ups on a large screen. And it was seen as silly rather than overtly shocking. And then, as I say, it transferred to the Whitehall Theatre for 5 weeks. And then I think did a tour of the UK. And when I think of President Putin now, I think of that show, and I think of I think we can talk about the puppetry of the Putin. And as with that show, there wasn't just one Putin on display. There were at least a couple. And in this case, I think there probably might be as many as three. 3 Putins all waving around while the real thing languishes in a fridge. And so it's time. And you're looking at the puppeteer, and the puppeteer, well, it could be Lavrov. It could be any number of people, dark individuals in the Kremlin, fingering Putin. And actually, in terms of fingering stuff, do you remember that scene in with Maureen Lipman in the wonderful seasons of Plebs? I think it would be in season 3 or something, just before one of the main characters dropped out for the blonde fellow in the last season. I must say I missed that show. It's an easy watch. But Maureen Lipman did something with her finger to a goat, which I wouldn't have done, and this provided the denouement in a little episode about being fed to the lions. So you can imagine Lavrov with his finger up the Putin and controlling Putin with a sort of finger, and this is where we need to move. Well, need to ride the moving platform where optics pass for outcomes, and this week, Mr. Putin, this puppeteered figure, is wheeled into China for the SCO summit, flanked by President Xi, maybe another puppeteered figure, and crucially, Mr. Modi. And I don't think Mr. Modi's got anyone up his backside, but who knows? It's billed as a convocation of strength. In truth, it's a theme park of power where the animatronic characters nod on cue while the wiring frays behind the scenery, and Mr. Lavrov pulls off his Putin figure as quickly as he possibly can before springing up to actually do the real talking. First, the itinerary. President Xi hosts more than 20 leaders, and Putin attends, stays for the victory pageantry, and then proceeds to Vladivostok. Modi returns to China for the first time in 7 years. That's an achievement. Everyone photographs everyone else. Nothing in the official schedule involves even indirect contact with Mr. Zelensky. And the Kremlin repeats its red line against NATO boots in Ukraine, and talks vaguely about the need for talks that must be well prepared. Translation: pictures now, substance never. There's really 10 points here that I would like to make. So there's point 1. Point 1 is all about the parade, like a circus parade. Before you get to the actual circus, you have the parade through town with was it? Do you remember there are lots of film references here today? Do you remember Doris Day in Jumbo? the parade, the magnificent circus comes to town. I don't think it's not called the Magnificent Circus. It's a fantastic circus or something. And so the second point is the optics. And the SCO is large in membership and small in delivery. It could not constrain India, Pakistan in their crises. It cannot reconcile the Sino-Indian rancor. It will not condemn Russia's war. Expect a communique of uplifting verbiage about the Shanghai spirit, and very little that binds. The show is the point. Modi's mere presence helps Beijing and Moscow say the club is thriving, but it's not. It's not. Third, the lifelines. Keeping Russia afloat now requires choreography with two anchors. There's the anchor of China that provides markets, machines and financing architecture, and then there's the anchor of India that provides oil trade and political cover as a non-Western giant. The SCO stage allows Moscow to float, to appear less isolated while it chases bilateral deals in the wings. Yet Washington hovers over the set like an angry storm. President Trump, like a bloated cherub, isolated while it chases while it chases around, punishing sanctions if Putin will not move to a ceasefire, and his team signals an offer of intelligence and air defense support for a European-led post-war security architecture in Ukraine. You can see it now. Trump hanging on a crane, backwards and forwards, floating around like a little cherub, dictating what's going to happen, if you can remember the words. Even when Washington is not on stage, it is still running the lighting desk from the wings. Even when you don't see Trump, he's there pushing levers. Well, what about this one? Boom! Ow! And the fourth point is the missing scene. President Zelensky. There's no handshake, no corridor diplomacy, no effort to let reality intrude on the photos. Kyiv says Moscow is doing everything to avoid a leader-level meeting, but here is an opportunity. It could take place here. In other words, the one image that would matter cannot be staged because it would require decisions, not decorations. Fifth, the African subplot. In Bamako, the junta paraded the homecoming of Timbuktu's manuscripts, 200 crates of civilization, hauled back as if to say order has returned. It hasn't. Security trends have worsened since Mali swapped France and the UN for Russian contractors. Wagner's brutal methods have burned local intelligence networks, inflamed the army and helped jihadists recruit. After Prigozhin's death, the brand was rebandaged as the Africa Corps under the Russian Ministry of Defense. But the practices survived the paint job, and the purges in Mali's Officer Corps this month tell you the alliance is corroding from the inside. The manuscripts return to their shelves, while the social fabric tears in the street. Sixth point, the economic myth. Moscow's model in Africa is supposed to be simple. Force secures concessions which fund force. In Mali, the mines have not fallen into Russian hands. Western operators largely remain. The junta has used the spectre of Russia to shake more money from them, then keep the door mostly closed to actual Russian control. Even the artisans have proved resistant. For the Kremlin, the Sahel is becoming a cash sink with reputational blowback. That is not empire, that is overextension. Seventh point, the law. And this week, Moscow moved towards quitting the Council of Europe's Torture Prevention Treaty. If your answer to allegations of torture is to leave the system that inspects prisons, you're not winning the argument. You're switching off the fire alarm. The SCO will not censure that either. The pageantry requires silence. Get in line. The eighth point, the American subplot. Trump wants the image of peacemaker, not just a cherub flying around in the darkened sky. He floats an economic war if Putin refuses a ceasefire and hints at US air support in a European plan to police any settlement. Well, there is no settlement. This mixes deterrence with dramaturgy. It may also work as pressure on Moscow if Europe believes the offer is real and aligns its own seriousness to it. The irony is, of course, that Trump's quest for the Nobel Peace Prize must pass through a deal the Kremlin doesn't actually want to sign and cannot afford to honour. The 9th point, the SCO again. Its very growth is its weakness, like a cancer. With India on one side and Pakistan on the other, Iran newly inside and Belarus added for symbolism, consensus hardens into platitude. The club is excellent at seating charts and souvenir photos. It is poor at crisis management. China won't alter that. And the 10th point is back to the puppetry of Putin. What is being sold this week is stamina. Putin tries to look inexhaustible by moving the leader from set to set, from handshake to handshake, from China to Vladivostok, while avoiding the one actor who refuses to follow the script. Meanwhile, in Mali, the Africa Corps plays security while the casualty numbers tell the opposite story. In Washington, a president auditions for the role of closer. Everyone wants the poster, few want the plot. So, this is the plain conclusion. There are no negotiations. There are photo opportunities used to keep cash, oil and political cover flowing into the war machine that cannot admit failure. The stagecraft might buy time, it will not buy peace. And while the cameras are packed away, 2 tests remain. One is whether Moscow is prepared to face a real conversation with Kyiv. The other is whether Africa's public will continue to tolerate Russian solutions that make them less safe. If the answer to both is no, then the puppetry of Putin will go on touring, but the audience will keep leaving early.